So now, and it's an absolute pleasure for me to introduce the first keynote speaker of the Digitale Leute Summit 24, Matthew Skelton. Please come on stage. And a big applause for Matthew.
My water's a phone.
I take, you can take this one, and this is your water. So I just want to make a very short introduction. Matthew, thanks for being with us.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's great that you have come from London. It's absolutely amazing what the Team Topologies made over the last year. So I came in contact with your work a couple of years ago when I worked for a larger tech organization, and we set up a mobile app team there. And then we wanted to try to integrate this into the larger tech organization. And there was a colleague, and he came up with the Team Topologies, and I dived into that content. And I think really it's a standard work for setting up and managing large tech organizations. So Matthew, thank you very much for being with us, and the stage is yours.
Thank you. Hello everyone, good morning, guten Morgen Köln, wie geht's? That's the last bit of German I'll use this morning. I am learning. So I'd like to talk about core agility for the self-steering organization. But before I do that, I just want to reflect on the name of this summit here today, Digitale Leute, digital people. And it's particularly relevant in the context of AI, because I was listening to a podcast on the aeroplane from the UK to Cologne last night. And on this podcast, they were talking about the emergence of synthetic personas, synthetic agents as part of AI. What do we mean by digital people? Do we mean a synthetic agent? Do we mean ourselves working in this space? Well, the future, it means both. How are we going to navigate this landscape of digital people in the world of work where we're building digitally enhanced products? So it particularly resonated with me to be speaking at Digitale Leute Summit today with this emergence of this new way of thinking about products, building products. Because in the future, to your point, the way that we do product is almost certainly going to be radically different. Just in the way that cloud enabled software as a service, because before cloud, you couldn't really do software as a service, right? It seems really obvious. Well, yeah, of course you want SaaS. But before cloud, we couldn't do it. Before generative AI, we wouldn't have been able to do agentic or autonomous-based products. All of that stuff is coming down the road and probably coming way faster than we expect. Now, in this context, we need our organizations to be self-steering. We need our organizations to be, we cannot put hierarchical control in an organization where we've got autonomous AI product development. It's not possible. It's not going to happen. We might have traditional business leaders wanting that kind of control. Not possible. So we need something else. We need to develop and take on board approaches that help the organization to become self-steering, self-guided. And I believe that's what Team Topologies provides. So clearly, when I and my co-author, Manuel Paes, wrote the book, we wrote it in 2018. It was published in September 2019. That's just over 5 years ago. Clearly, that's before generative AI, or before all this recent activity. We couldn't have predicted this kind of activity. However, what's interesting about Team Topologies is I believe it does provide a foundation for thinking through how we work in these different ways. How we work together with lots of different contexts on knowledge work, on products, on digital services. Team Topologies is not specific just to traditional software development, as we'll see in a minute. And ultimately, I think that Team Topologies is the foundation of a humane, product-centric operating model. Whether we're building traditional digital products, or whether we are curating and shaping agentic AI, autonomous, defined products over the next few years. It's the same kind of principles that apply. So I'm Matthew Skelton. I'm the co-author of that book, Team Topologies. My focus is on holistic innovation across the organization, giving organizations the ability to innovate across the whole part of what we're doing, particularly with autonomous AI. If we're not innovating, if we're not setting ourselves up for innovation at all levels of the organization, then we are being overtaken by an organization that is innovating across the organization. I'm not a product person, by the way, or at least I didn't think I was. Interestingly, though, I was chatting to Melissa Perry recently in Hamburg a few weeks ago. Who has heard of Melissa Perry? Please tell me you've heard of Melissa Perry at a product conference. If you've not heard of Melissa Perry, go and find out about Melissa Perry. She's one of the foremost people in product. She wrote a great book called Mind the Build Trap, and a new book recently called Product Operations. It turns out that product operations, her book, and the principles behind it, it turns out that book is super compatible with Team Topologies. I'm going to go on her podcast in a few weeks' time, and we're going to talk about this compatibility between how she sees the need to run product and the language and the principles from Team Topologies. The book has sold about 170 or 180,000 copies now. It's really done very, very well. There's a German language version, but there's also versions in Japanese and Chinese and Korean and a bunch of other languages too. Now, at Team Topologies, we're on a mission to make work more humane and more effective for everyone via these Team Topologies patterns and principles. It's a very mission-centric thing that we're doing. And actually, the core of the Team Topologies operation will soon be non-profit. I'm not here trying to sell you certifications. I'm not going to become a millionaire by selling you a Team Topologies certified blah, blah, blah. This is not what we're here to do. So all the stuff I'm talking to you about today is really genuinely to try and improve organizations and make them more humane and more effective. I want to ask this question. Why do so many organizations struggle with being responsive? We're already seeing this challenge in the move from very traditional waterfall style software development or digital product development through to something more nimble and agile or with greater agility. That's a big struggle for many organizations. It's going to be so painful when agentic and autonomous AI starts to come in the mix. Because if you think about it, before cloud, before SaaS, it would take at least 6 months for a new product iteration. With SaaS, maybe a week, a couple of days. With autonomous agentic AI, a new product iteration is going to be in the matter of hours. This is already happening. This is not just some future thing. This is already happening. People are already doing product iterations and testing them at scale in the matter of hours. So that speed of iteration is just going to be impossible for some traditionally arranged organizations to adapt to. If we want to do something like run a marathon, or dance in a ballet, or do rock climbing, what do we need to do? What do we need to do to avoid ourselves getting injured? We need to train, right? We need to do some exercise. Like, if you don't have the core agility, the core strength in the muscles and in the bones and in the ligaments, and also core strength in kind of how we see ourselves, we can't achieve these things. We're sitting on the couch like this nice-looking dog. We can't expect to be sitting most of the time on the couch and then suddenly get to a point where we're delivering product updates on a hourly basis or daily basis. It's not going to happen. So most organizations do not invest the time in core agility and self-awareness, but then they complain, oh, it's too slow. If you want to run a marathon, if you want to dance in a ballet, if you want to become a rock climber, you have to invest in that core agility every day. So these major activities need core agility, like Pilates or yoga or these kind of things. If you think about the word corporation or corporate, which is used certainly in English language, that word comes from Latin meaning body, corporate, corpus. It literally means like the body. We're thinking about the organization as a body, but most organizations don't do that yoga or pilates or those exercises to help them stay nimble and supple. So I actually believe a really useful way to think about this is that Team Topologies provides this core agility for the self-steering organization, this core sort of yoga or pilates, that kind of agility, that kind of bodily agility. And this is when we're really thinking about changing rapidly. We've got the agility to respond to changing conditions. And like, at the risk of overemphasizing it, one of the biggest changes that's coming up soon is, of course, this way in which digital products, at least, are going to be defined and written by generative AI. Why do we need this? Well, remote first ushered in a new way of working. The speed of change with technology and climate change and geopolitical change, changing trading relationships, regulations, a whole bunch of things. A lot of these things are interrelated, clearly. Organizations are going to have to increasingly navigate these things much more quickly. And there's obviously increased local and global competition. So as I said before, I think that Team Topologies provides this foundation for a humane, product-centric operating model. When I say humane, I mean we're not trying to create a machine. This is not about creating a more efficient machine with people like little cogs or gears. We're talking about this is where we're able to be fully human, but increasingly effective as well, using digital tools to help us be effective in the organization. And actually, I think Team Topologies ends up being a way to navigate a transition from project to product. That's one way to see it. Now, many of you will probably already be working in a product-centric way of operating model or way of working. But if you're in an organization which is still on that journey, then Team Topologies can potentially help with that transition to something more product-centric. And even, to be honest, we can get beyond product-centric. Is that a bad thing to say? Is there something beyond product, or is product the end goal, the shining, like, epitome of everything? I think there might be something, am I allowed to say that? There might be something beyond product even, which, or at least product has a different look in the future, a different feel. I think ultimately it's like a set of patterns to encourage emergent behaviors for fast flow. Fast flow being the kind of target end state, what we're trying to achieve to enable us to have that agility. It helps us navigate knowledge work of all kinds, actually. It's not just about product development. It actually works in things like education, in healthcare, in legal services, a bunch of other places too. Anything that's actually knowledge work, it seems to help navigate that. Anywhere where we've got teams working in a technology-assisted way, particularly digital technology, but not necessarily just digital. We're doing some work with firms that use hardware and firmware as well as part of the mix. So it's not just a software thing. And we really, really have a strong connection to this humane element, like the human side of product, the human side of doing work in organizations. Team Topologies in itself is not an operating model, but it can help to generate other operating models, because we can use these principles and then on the back of that come up with a way of working which is truly effective and humane. Takes into account the important aspects of being human that humans can provide, and understands that that's always going to be technology augmented, particularly augmented with digital technology. One thing that Team Topologies does time and time again is to bring a clarity of purpose. People, just talking to someone just before, she was saying that she introduced Team Topologies into her organization a couple of years ago, and part of what it provided, and lots of people tell us this, is it's the common language that allows people to work together more effectively. It helps It makes it clear that we need to increase the clarity of purpose across different parts of the organization and the organization as a whole. And it helps us to adapt continuously if we're using it in an effective way. So it ends up providing this kind of core agility to enable us to do other things. It's like the kind of exercises you do on your yoga mat. Anyone do yoga? I do a tiny bit. So, or kind of you go to the gym and you do press-ups and you do kind of, weights, this kind of thing, right? It's that sort of stuff. It's helping your organization to have that kind of core strength so you're ready to do something. So let's just have a little look at some of the key principles that actually inform Team Topologies and how these help. The first one is a focus on flow. That's the starting point. On the front cover of the book, the subtitle is Organizing Business and Technology Teams for Fast Flow. And this is fast flow value. This is not a fast flow of features, a fast flow of little software changes that go to production. This is a fast flow of value. We're really trying to make sure that we're getting valuable product or valuable things into the hand of users. But it turns out that a focus on flow and organizing for flow, architecting for flow, procuring for flow, actually has some really useful benefits as a whole. It actually helps us so we're decoupling different parts, things that should not be together, or things that don't need to be together, we're separating to improve flow. And it turns out if you do that, you actually get the ability to scale the organization way bigger, way better, without the overhead. And it's a really interesting property, and there's some physics behind it. There's some kind of biological sort of principles going on there that we can look at. That's a talk for another day. I'd love to give that talk sometime, but anyway. So it turns out that architecting for flow has these kind of really useful side effects or benefits of increasing scale, avoiding waste, avoiding time being wasted on people just waiting on each other all the time. And we'll look at that in a bit. The second principle, though, is we need to make sure there's high trust inside teams. We're deliberately spending time and effort creating real teams that really work well together, not just a collection of people with the same manager, but a true team. Because if you get high trust inside a true team, we get high-speed decision-making. We get high context. We get the ability to make really powerful and relevant decisions with awareness of the previous history, so that the decisions we're making today are informed by what's gone before. We're not just trying to push in a new feature. We've got the context from before. We're expecting teams to be persistent or long-lived or change kind of slowly. This doesn't mean they never change, but we're not just bringing people together for a little piece of work and then disbanding it. We explicitly need to think about the cognitive load on the teams. So team cognitive load, because there's so much to think about, there's so much to learn about new technologies, there's so much to learn about the domain, there's so much to learn about agentic AI and autonomous AI. Shoot me if I say AI too much. I am a bit of a skeptic as well, but this is what we need to navigate. But even in the context of building agentic or autonomous AI systems, there's still an amount of cognitive load that the team of humans, or combination of humans and AI agents, will have. There's an amount of context that we can have and know more. So we still need to think about cognitive load, even if we're not writing Java code or Python or whatever it is, or TypeScript. Even if we're not writing that code ourselves, we're still thinking about a bunch of things that create a coherent product, and there's still cognitive load for that. Clearly, we need to make sure that we're thinking about safe and rapid changes to infrastructure and data and applications and so on. However on-call, 24/7 on-call looks in 5 years' time, we need to make sure the incentives are healthy. It's going to be a mix of people and AI agents on call, but that whole thing needs to be healthy. We can't have people trying to be on call because they're going to be paid 5 times their normal hourly rate, because that's going to lead to the kind of wrong kind of incentives. We need to make sure that if someone is woken up at 2 in the morning to help fix some kind of major problem, that they feel invested in what they're doing. They're not just looking at the code that someone else has written and they don't really understand anything. We need to encourage teams to be close to customers. Internal customers, external customers. This kind of sounds obvious to lots of people, but it turns out that in many organizations, the idea of allowing teams building products to be close to customers is just... So what does it take to get our product people and teams and people, engineers and so on, who are building these systems to be really close to the actual customers? And this is a scary one. Acknowledge that it's not possible to predict the behavior of these complex software ecosystems that run our products now. It's just not possible. It hasn't been possible to do that for many years. But it's simply not possible, and so the way in which we approach this whole problem, we can't test our way out of the problems that are likely to occur in production. It's too unpredictable. So we need to have a different approach to it, using observability and a bunch of other things too. And clearly, encouraging ongoing discovery and innovation at multiple different levels of the organization is essential. Again, especially when the speed of product development is going to 10x or 100x over the coming years. We need to avoid teams waiting on other teams during delivery. In many organizations, we see problems with delivery as a result of maybe 17, 20, 30, 60 teams all waiting on each other in a tangled mess in order to get something out of the door. Let me demonstrate this. If each person, or even if each autonomous AI agent in the organization is blocked for 1 hour per working day, so if they're waiting on updates from another team before they can make progress, so if each person in the organization is blocked for 1 hour per working day, how much does this cost? Let's do some calculations. Let's say the fully loaded cost of a human is 160,000 euros a year, whatever. Let's just take that figure. Let's say there's 260 paid days a year, we get some holiday, and there's like 400 people in this department. If you do the basic maths on this, that's 8 million euros a year, just on people waiting on other people. They're not doing any value add, they're just waiting on someone else to do something. 8 million a year, like, it doesn't sound an awful lot, but it's a useful money to spend on product or on improvements or something that's more value-centric. And in reality, in most organizations, people are waiting on other people for more than 1 hour a day. And even if they're not just sitting there doing nothing, they've started something new. So what's happened? Work in progress has gone up. That makes things worse. Doesn't make things better. We just have many more things in progress now, so throughput still is going down. So many organizations are spending millions and millions and millions every year on people waiting on other people because they haven't thought about how the work flows through the organization. There is money to unlock here to improve how work works and make our organizations more humane. There's a great example from JP Morgan. You know, that little startup selling pizzas just around the... No, sorry, this is the big financial services organization. Huge, a huge amount of money that they're managing in terms of investments. They gave a talk at Fast Flow Conference 2023 in London. Fast Flow Conference is all about Team Topologies. And they shared how JP Morgan applied Team Topologies to improve flow in a market-leading enterprise platform. You can watch the video on YouTube later. The point is this. What they did, on the left-hand side there, Q1, they mapped out all of the delivery dependencies inside this organization. Is anyone familiar with the red string? Put your hand up if you've been burned by the red string. A few people. I feel your pain. Okay, I feel your pain. The red string is like mapping out the dependencies between the different teams during delivery. And they use the Team Topologies principles to reshape the team boundaries, to reshape the architecture, improve flow. And you can see there's far fewer dependencies then on the right-hand side. The details don't matter. It's a bit fuzzy, but the point being that they reduce 60% of dependencies through better team design using team topologies. Now, we don't know how much they saved, but if you can guess the calculations, it's millions. It's millions that they were able to unlock by using the team topologies principles to reshape their teams and architecture and so on for better flow. And this is, in my head, this is the kind of top-level architecture. This is what it looks like. We've got multiple independent flows, and it's a fractal thing. So if we look inside what we call a platform, the blue box there, so it's like a set of things that is helping to accelerate innovation and delivery outside. We see the same pattern inside there. You can zoom in to one part of the organization, it looks the same. You can zoom out, it looks the same. That's what we mean by fractal. So we can apply the same principles across the whole organization. It's not just about like software development or another particular area. It's effectively the whole organization can use the same organizing principles for knowledge work at least. And these principles look like this. We define 4 types of team. In actual fact, it's actually really 3 types of team and 1 team grouping. So in the book, it says 4 types of teams. We kind of got it wrong. We even found a message in Slack from 2018 where I was talking with my co-author, Manuel, and we were saying, hey, this is wrong. We should change it to say grouping instead, and then we forgot to do it, and it went into the book. Anyway, it's 3 different types of team and a kind of special kind of grouping. And the reason for this is to define some behavior, expectations, and kind of sort of ways of working that then are quite different between these different teams to help us think about and reason about why and how we're doing different kinds of work. That's the main point. Our starting point is a stream-aligned team. It's aligned to a stream of value. That's the principle. So in many cases, this is just your product team, because you've got a mixture of people in there, cross-functional, and you look after a particular user journey or particular product end-to-end, and that's kind of normal. It's been normal in lots of organizations for a long time, but the key thing is it doesn't have to be just a product. It could be another kind of stream of value. Anyway, that's our starting point, and ideally, we would have multiple independent stream-aligned teams inside the organization, all busy working on their separate kind of flows of value, and that would be great. But in reality, because of the nature of the work that we're doing, because of the nature of the technology and so on, then sometimes the cognitive load is too high. If we're going to go really quickly delivering value, the cognitive load becomes too high because we take on too much of the technology detail or too much of detail of regulations or data management or something else. And so then we think, can we take some of that cognitive load away and put that inside another team effectively? And that's what the other team types are for. The other team types effectively are to help improve flow by reducing cognitive load. And it's a really important way of thinking about how we do work. So each team type or grouping has got very specific expected behaviors. It allows us to have expectations. It allows us then to have and set expectations on other teams and say, hey, we kind of expect to be working in this way, but it doesn't feel like that. So then it gets us away from having like very like personal conversations, if you like. It turns it into something which is more, where the conversation turns to something more kind of productive. And each team type or grouping has a very specific relation to flow and team cognitive load. That's the idea. We've also got, though, team interaction modes, because inside an organization, it's important to think about how different teams interact, how they relate to each other. So this is a relational thing. There's collaboration, working together really closely to do something new, usually find a new boundary. X as a service, one team providing something and one team consuming something. And facilitation, where one team is helping another team to do something new, or to learn something, or discover something. And the constraints on these interactions between these teams. So let me just be clear. We're suggesting that the way in which teams interact in the organization should be just those 3 ways of interacting. Maybe that's not quite enough, but we think it's just about enough to have a variety, a richness of behavior inside the organization to help us do these kind of things that we need to do. So these constraints on interactions provide signals to tell us when, let's say, some boundaries are not good for fast flow. Maybe 18 months ago, we built something over here. It was the right thing to build at the time. The technology's moved on. The boundaries that we have in place here, the APIs or the way in which that product works, is no longer working for us. It's actually stopping flow. Let's use the signals from the team interaction modes to tell us, ooh, let's have a conversation. Let's reshape this boundary. Let's change the responsibilities of the teams to help us have better flow. So the third principle we've already talked about, fast flow. But interestingly, organizing for fast flow means we end up being happy with some things that historically were like, can't do that. Things like duplication, different versions of things at the same time, asynchronous ways of deploying or asynchronous ways of achieving a kind of holistic product. We might even have like an internal marketplace for different things. So there might be gently competing offerings from different teams to see which one ends up being slightly better, rather than just defining the official way of doing this thing over here. We might allow 2 or 3 different options, compare and contrast, innovate very quickly, find out the best way of doing it via a kind of marketplace approach. The fourth principle then, team cognitive load, I've mentioned already. Here's the thing, team cognitive load is a key design principle. I said before I'm not a product person, but I think actually I'll probably end up with some of the similar underlying like intentions behind good product design, because I'm thinking about design principles, but I'm thinking about design principles for how work happens, design principles for organizations. I don't think Team Topologies is a product, but I think there's some product-ish thinking or design sort of principles behind it, which you hopefully can recognize in some of this. And we end up with a more humane, compassionate, and to be honest, realistic workplace, because many organizations that try and do all this stuff, they're just not realistic about how work needs to happen, about kind of cognitive load, about flow, about human behavior and intent, and so on and so on. Our fifth principle is called thinnest viable platform, TVP. So historically, what we call a platform is something which enhances flow by reducing cognitive load. It can be anything. It could be a wiki page. If a wiki page says, do this, do that, do the other, if that improves the flow of value in teams that use it, great. We don't need to build anything else. And that's what we mean by a thinnest viable platform. It avoids organizations building some huge, great blob of technology, which is just not needed and becomes outdated very quickly. If you look at the speed of technology innovation, there's a real danger in building too much inside the organization because it'll be out of date too quickly. And we should empower teams to adjust boundaries to enhance flow. So a good chunk of this stuff is about empowering teams to have the right conversations, to change their responsibility boundaries, to change their landscape. And this can help to avoid this horrible reorganization that happens every 3 or 5 years. Because we're using local knowledge to suggest, we need to shift the boundaries here. If we change the responsibility boundaries here, it will actually help us to look after this product better. Let's have that conversation. Let's negotiate that. Oh yeah, we've improved how this API works. Great. Let's move on to the next thing. We don't need to have top-down directed control of that kind of thing. So let's have a look at some key success factors in this kind of space. Clearly, we're expecting some of this stuff to take months and years, not just weeks. We did do some work for a retailer in America. The CEO had read the Team Topologies book, and we're in a workshop with them. And we're talking through a lot of the material that we've been sharing, looking at today. And the CEO said, great, this is really, really good. So we'll be done in, what, 3 weeks? And we all laughed. We all, ha, ha, ha. And then there was a silence. And he was serious. The CEO was serious about these changes happening in 3 weeks because he hadn't internalized the nature of what we're talking about. This is a reshaping of kind of how work happens in the organization, how work flows, not just renaming a few teams. So we really need to provide the time and space and funding for real capability enhancement and behavior change. This is giving the organization or enhancing the organization's capability for innovating at speed. Interestingly, there's a quotation here from Adrian Cockcroft. Now, Adrian Cockcroft is a technologist who's been at the forefront of every major technology change in the last 30 years. He's worked at Sun Microsystems, eBay, Netflix, Battery Ventures, Amazon Web Services. And we were having a conversation on social media last year, and he just threw out this amazing, operating model in a social media post, which goes like this. The work is delivered in many small changes that are uncoordinated to enable flow. Management's job is to provide context, prioritization, and to coordinate across teams, lending resources across the teams if necessary to unblock things. It works well in a high-trust culture. Now, that is your modern AI-compatible product operating model in a single social media post. Not by me, by Adrian Cockcroft, who's done this thing for 30 years. And this is the mindset we're talking about. But look at that word there. Many small changes that are uncoordinated. Oh, God, it's a project management nightmare. The project manager will go, oh, what are we going to do? It needs to be uncoordinated so we get that flow, we get the scale that comes with that flow. Almost all decisions that we have in the organization then need to use these twin lenses. Imagine putting on a pair of spectacles. One of the lenses is fast flow and the other is team cognitive load. We're using these as design principles for our organization, design principles for how work flows through the organization, for how value flows through the organization. And almost all roles or teams should be focused either on a flow or on supporting a flow effectively. Even leadership and management. So this speaks to kind of servant leadership. Has anyone heard of servant leadership, or does anyone know about this? Anyone practices? Okay, quite a few. It speaks to that kind of change, because leadership and management should be there to typically support flows of value. It's really a big shift. If organizations truly want to be effective and take advantage of new ways of working, then this is the implication. Let's have a look. There's some underlying techniques and some social and technical practices that we need to have in place. I'm going to skip through these really quickly. They're on the slides, which are now online already. We need to realign our architecture for information and products. We need fast feedback via digital telemetry. We've had that for a while, but that's a key starting point, clearly. Obviously, we need some good technical practices. Teams need to steward the evolution of these products. We're not just delivering a set of features one after another which are completely irrelevant or not connected. There's a sense of holistic stewardship about the things that we're producing. There's some basics like configuration needs to be stored in version control, and operational transparency, which hopefully most people here are doing, but if not, then it's worthwhile getting aligned with it. We need to design for automation. And I think over time, we're going to see design principles where things become designed to be consumable by agentic AI as well. So the way in which we design things, the interfaces that we provide, mean that they are consumable by something that's not humans, so that that stuff can then go and build new services on the back of it. I don't know what that looks like, but that's starting to happen already. So continuous kind of everything in this space. There's a foundation of psychological safety we need, whatever happens, particularly as we're navigating AI space. And we need to make sure that across the organization, we're actively diffusing awareness of what we're doing across these different team boundaries. We don't want lots of tiny little silos, tiny little teams all just not talking to anything. We need to push that awareness and knowledge across the organization so the organization as a whole can continue to innovate. So as I mentioned, the core Team Topologies operation will soon be non-profit. We've got lots of stuff available. A network of world-class experts, some of whom may be here, or if you're interested in becoming an advocate for Team Topologies, then get in touch via the website. We've got a growing number of people who are very enthusiastic about this stuff. There's an academy, and there's a product in progress around managing cognitive load. So let's get off the couch. If we want to do these great things, particularly with AI, we need to adapt, have some core agility inside our organization, and that's what Team Topologies provides. The foundation of a humane, product-centric operating model. Thank you very much.
So, Matthew, thank you very much for your keynote. I would have a lot of questions now. Now we have run a bit out of time. So you are here for the complete day, I assume?
I'm here for today, and I've got a workshop tomorrow with my co-author. So my co-author, Manuel Parish, will be here as well.
Yes, Manuel is tomorrow. He will be there as well at the Startplatz. So, and Matthew is around. So if you have question, go ahead and ask him. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.